Hello, I'm Calvin Morris and I'm here today to talk to you about Doctor Who, The Husbands of River Song. Now, this is a spoiler heavy review, so if you haven't seen the episode, don't watch this review because it will contain story elements that will ruin the story for you. That being said, let's talk about the good, the bad, the things I liked, the things I didn't. Let's review Doctor Who. So one of the first things I want to get into talking about really is, as usual, the pre-titles teaser. And one of my pet peeves about a Doctor Who Christmas special is that every single time they do one, it's always set around Christmas. Even if the story has nothing to do with Christmas, it's still set around Christmas. There's usually snow, there's usually decorations, that sort of thing. And I just feel that, as a pet peeve of mine, I would rather see just a good Doctor Who adventure that had nothing to do with Christmas. You know, we'll make it Christmassy enough for us. You know what I mean? So it's just a small pet peeve. But once again, it was a let's open up in a winter wonderland on an alien planet with human colony. I guess, you know, I can see why they done it. You know, obviously it's Christmas, so why not? But as a pet peeve, it's just like one of those things that, you know, I just wish they would give us just a damn good Doctor Who adventure, not worry about whether or not it's Christmas or not, because, you know, well, just do it. Anyway, so the episode starts out with the Doctor's box landed in a familiar looking street. I guess it's one of the sets that was previously constructed for something else, and they're just getting as much use out of it as possible. So that would be my feeling on that. It's supposed to be a human colony in the year 5000 and something, 5400 and something. Again, it was one of those little things. I can understand why they're using the set a lot, because obviously it's been constructed and costs a lot of money and get as much use out of it as possible, but it just didn't sell the year 5000 to me. There are things that they could have done to redress it to make it look a little bit more futuristic that would have worked, and you could have you know, it would have mixed the styles. You'd have had this sort of old Victorian style and new tech stuff that you would get from architecture that's been built on older constructions. Then we get Matt Lucas introduced into the show. I like Matt Lucas a lot. I thought he's done well for himself. He was a little underused in this episode. From a personal standpoint, I felt that Matt Lucas's full abilities in Doctor Who could have been utilised to his comic timing and his other work that he's put into so many other things, such as Little Britain and so on, that he was really sort of underused in this episode. But for what it is, for just the setup to the story, I thought it was kind of interesting. I liked the part where the camera drifts down the TARDIS and it says, "Carolers will be criticised." I like that. I thought the antlers, the TARDIS making holographic antlers, was a little bit over the top. But this is just a fun little episode. So anyway, gets into the title sequence and gets onto the other side, and this is where the story starts to pick up, whereby they've just entered the flying saucer, and it's been revealed that the person who was married to the king is River Song, King Hydroflax. And then we get into the inner chamber and we see Hydroflax lying on a slab, played by Greg Davis. I felt it was a little bit unusual to cast Greg Davis as Hydroflax. I mean, you know, he's done other work as well, acting as well, you know, such as In Between Us and so on, but he's normally known for his stand-up. But then again, you were casting a sort of an angry sourpuss of a king, and Greg Davis really does sort of fit that. They cast a type here, you know. So yeah, a little bit unusual, but again, caster type, so therefore it worked for him. I thought the armour for Hydroflax looked a little bit Warhammer 40k. I felt that it was okay. It was fine. There was nothing really wrong with it, but it didn't really say monarch so much as, you know, sort of battle warrior, and I guess that's what they were going for. And when those wings popped out, it said Buzz Lightyear. So, but this was the sort of episode it was. This wasn't a Doctor Who adventure. This was one of the adventures in between an adventure. So, it's sort of like a much smaller story, but being given the Doctor Who treatment. And you know, it was a jewel heist story that a sort of jewel heist gone wrong kind of story, and that became a background plot to this episode. This episode was kind of two or maybe three stories in one, which on first viewing I felt was a little bit confusing and a little bit weird. Which, you know, I like that. I like things that have legs that you know you've got to watch a couple of times to really get the gist of it. But on second viewing, I enjoyed the episode a lot more than what I did the first time around. Characters in this episode that I really liked were Fleming. I thought the character design on him was brilliant. This sort of bug-like face and with these deep grooves and this sort of big brow, and he sort of fitted a butlery sort of look. It was kind of strange to make a creature fit a butler, but there we are. I mean, but it worked for it. And I liked the fact that there was a lot more aliens, a variety of aliens in this episode. But going back to where they kidnap the head of Hydroflax, and then they make their way out, they teleport, and they deal with the issue of sometimes people get teleports wrong, and you're a couple of feet off the floor and you end up... That's clever, you know, because it's never been really addressed in any sort of science fiction, really, that you could teleport somebody to somewhere and get the coordinates wrong, and you've teleported them, you know, 10 feet above the floor. Because it doesn't happen in science fiction. Most of the time people get it spot on, and I think it's nice that in this episode, you know, everything gets cocked up a little bit. And that's what the other thing I like about the episode is the fact that this was a fun run-around episode and wasn't all about, you know, destroying the galaxy, destroying the universe, people invading. It wasn't that sort of story. It was just a fun little outing and an adventure. And like I said, it was a couple of stories merged into one, which made it, probably to make it the 60-minute mark, they had to put a couple of stories together here to make it work. But because I felt the first half of the story wasn't as strong as the second half of the story. But yeah, they've got Hydroflax on board and this spaceship now, because they've gone in the TARDIS, and they're setting up a visit with the buyer, and I think it's probably the most graphic thing I've ever seen in Doctor Who. I'm not gonna lie, when that Stitch just grabbed the side of his head and just pulled it open and then took out it was like, man, this is for 5:30 on a Saturday on what was it? No, it was a Friday. 5:30 on a Friday night. I know it was Christmas Day as well. That's kind of graphic, you know what I mean? That's kind of like, wow. They won't put blood in Doctor Who, but they'll have somebody open up their head and pull out a ball. Jeez. Brilliant though. Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, it looked awful. It looked really, really awful. I just loved it. I thought, yeah, this is good. This is good. This shows a bar that you can set, that you can go, right then, anything that comes up to this bar is acceptable. And even if people complain about it, stuff it. You know, don't listen to them, because, you know, if they don't want to watch it, they can always turn over. So, but I thought that was really, really graphic, and I loved it a lot. I just absolutely loved it. So, the obviously the deal goes sideways because we're only halfway through the story, so things have to go sideways. And Hydroflax's body escapes, and I'm not sure I like the idea of having to swap heads to download information. I think it would have been much easier to just put like a probe into somebody's head. That way you could have killed them off as well. But again, it didn't. To me, it didn't serve that strong a purpose for somebody like Matt Lucas, who can do a really good character part, and I just felt that they were sort of swept aside for the storytelling, which is good. The character serves the story, not the other way around. So I did like that. And then we get through they disintegrate Hydroflax's head to get the diamond, and I think maybe I would have changed his voice a little bit, done something to Greg Davies' voice just to make it a little bit more booming. I don't know. But yeah, they disintegrate his head. They get the jewel, and it's coming up to sort of almost the end of the episode, and this is where the change in story, for me, this is where the story actually really did pick up. Because it was the personal moments between the Doctor and River Song that I felt were the strongest elements of this story. When she realised that he was the Doctor, and that was a little bit of a weak spot throughout the start of the episode. When she realised who he was, to me the story really caught fire, and I felt that it was a really, really, really strong finish to the episode. And he finally gives her the sonic screwdriver, that we see in Forest of the Dead. I mean, it was a great moment. It was like fantastic, finally. But then you sort of realise that it's sort of maybe the final River Song story, because after this she goes to the Forest of the Dead. Maybe. You see, like the Doctor said, the nights on that planet were 25 years long. That being said, Stephen Moffat also said that when it comes to River Song, you can have as many stories as you like with River Song, because don't forget, she died in the first episode that we met her in. So she started off dead and has worked her way back to life. So there are many years in between. There's a 200-year gap there that we can have plenty of further adventures with River Song. So there's a lot of good in this episode. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of comedy. Particularly like the whole part where the Doctor enters into the TARDIS. He says, finally it's my turn. And he walks in, and it's the most over-the-top performance of anybody ever walking into a TARDIS ever. This place has changed my total perspective on 3 dimensions. It was just like the most ridiculously over-the-top thing you've ever seen in your life. I thought it was brilliant. I also like the fact that they've redressed the TARDIS again. They continue to redress this set, and they make subtle changes here and there that just add to it, and I felt that it was very key and very important to point that out, because most of the time they will completely reconstruct a set, that they will take it down and construct a whole brand new one around it, whereas what they're doing with this one is that they're continually adding to it. I mean, if you look at the initial set that we started off with Matt Smith, and then you come to this set right now, they're light years apart. You might think that it's exactly the same, but if you compare the first one and the second one, this one is far more rich. It's a far more developed set. The roundels are back on the walls with these glowing lights around them. It's just you can spend a long time looking at all the details on the TARDIS set, and you still won't take it all in. So I really like the fact that they keep refining it. Other things that I liked in the episode. Well, first of all, I liked the speech by River Song, where she says to the Doctor, when she doesn't know who he is, she says to him, you can admire a sunset, but you don't expect a sunset to admire you back. So all that sort of stuff I really thought was done very, very well. And again, it's a Stephen Moffat written episode, and as I've said before, I think he's a wonderful writer. I don't think he's a good showrunner. That's where I'm going to leave it. The failures of this episode. Okay, let's get into the failures of the episode. Now, as I said right at the start, my pet peeve is that it's a Christmas episode set around Christmas. I don't get it. I don't like it. To me, the last really great one that was sort of set around Christmas that had very little to do with Christmas was probably The Next Doctor. I felt that was probably the strongest one. But the other failures to this episode were that it took such a long time for River Song to realise that's the Doctor. To sort of go, oh yeah, you're the Doctor. She knows the Doctor inside and out. She knows him very well, not just from the diaries, but from actually being married to him. And I just felt that she should have caught on a little bit sooner. That it was, don't get me wrong, it still led to some moments whereby later on in the episode the Doctor actually says, really? Oh, come on, you still don't know who I am? Which was good, but it discredited River Song a little bit. The other thing that I felt was a little bit of a criticism against River Song is the fact that there doesn't seem to be a lot of archaeology going on with her. She does a bit, and it's always off camera, and what we see of her on camera is more the thievery and the deception. I guess they're trying to make it a little bit sort of Indiana Jones, but even Indiana Jones would have these moments during the film whereby somebody would show him something and he'd go, oh, okay, these glyphs probably are from this particular century or something. There would be something of archaeology thrown into the character, whereas I feel like the more we get to know River Song, the less of an archaeologist she actually is. So other bad things in this episode, well, again, there's the design of Hydra Flax's suit. I would have preferred something a little bit more majestic than just looking like Warhammer 40k crossed with Buzz Lightyear. And maybe whittle the story down to just sort of the MacGuffin of the episode was this diamond, which led to this second part of the story. I felt that maybe the sideways adventures of that were distracting from the overall story, but it still came together pretty well. So overall, it was a pretty fun romp. It wasn't a serious episode. It wasn't a Galaxy in Peril episode. It was simply just this fun little run around of an episode. What am I going to give it out of 10? I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. That's not bad. That's a 7 out of 10. I mean, it sounds, I could give it an 8. But the CGI wasn't up to notch here, and some of the design work could have been better. But as a fun run around, enjoyable episode, I had a lot of enjoyment out of it. I got a lot of fun out of it. I felt that it could have been paced a little bit better, but there's very little wrong with this episode. You can have a Doctor Who episode that is just outright zany fun, and that's what this was. It was a good, enjoyable episode it was harmless. There we go. This episode was harmless. We got past the last story arc and before the next one, and this one sits in the middle just as a bit of filler and a bit of fun. So anyway, that's what I thought of the Husbands of River Song, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Also, you can feel free to like and comment on this video, subscribe to this channel, or go over and join me on Google+. But until next time, I'll see you later, guys.